Introduce our special guest because we have a ton of content to share with you today that I'm so incredibly excited to hear from. So, meet Rebecca Wing. She is an internationally experienced CEO, COO, general counsel, and financial services expert across construction, real estate, financial services, and technology sectors across 80 countries. And currently, Rebecca serves as corporate board director for a mergers and acquisitions firm, a privately held manufacturer, a real estate developer investor, and a cannabis social equity fund. She's also a founding member of the Private Directors Association and currently the chair of their upcoming PRISM conference, which we're going to talk a lot about today. Welcome, Rebecca. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Debra, for inviting me to speak.
Absolutely. So to get us started, I mentioned the Private Directors Association, or PDA. Tell us a little bit about that organization, what they do, who they serve.
Well, the Private Directors Association is an organization. It's a not-for-profit, a 501c6. So basically, it's a trade association that was formed to help with private company governance. There was a need to have some kind of organization to help private companies establish a good governance regime.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. And then what kind of members do you serve today? Who would join PDA?
Well, aspiring board directors, current board directors, CEO and chairman of the board,
Mhm.
Both private and not-for-profit boards. The companies that we serve are PE companies, venture capitalists, ESOP. Family business is a big
Yeah.
pillar of our companies that we serve.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a nationwide organization, membership organization. Quick plug for PDA. Michelle and I are both members. Norma on our team is actually a new member, and they do a lot of really great content for aspiring board directors, current sitting board directors, a lot of networking opportunities in different cities and virtually. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I appreciate that background a little bit on PDA because really, we've invited you here to talk about the opportunities there are in private company directorship, and I'd love to talk a little bit about that. And before we get into that, if everyone wants to pop in the chat where they're joining us from, I know a few of you are, which is great. Philadelphia, Columbus, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Puerto Rico. So thanks so much for joining us. And I have a quick download for everyone. If anyone in the audience is thinking about launching your first board seat, you're launching your board career, and you're wondering, am I board ready? What do I need? We actually have a download for this to help you think through some of the things that will help you launch your board career. So if everyone wants to take a quick snapshot of this, I'll leave it up for just a second while I queue up this question for Rebecca. But tell us a little bit about what kinds of opportunities there are for private company board seats. What does that look like? Because I think a lot of board candidates think public companies and they don't realize that all of the other opportunities there are as an aspiring board director.
Well, yes, if you're aspiring to be on a board, of course there is public company boards, but there are much more opportunities in the private sector. There's 5 times, if not more, opportunity to join a private company board. Some of the largest companies in the United States are private companies. And we just assume they're public because they're a well-known name. Kohler, quite a few other companies out there that are right on the tip of your tongue are probably private companies that have great opportunities. Now, with the board, you could either be on the fiduciary board or an advisory board. There's 2 differences. Fiduciary, you have definitely some responsibilities and more obligations. Advisory, some companies have advisory boards, and they usually start out with an advisory board because they're not quite sure if they want to relinquish control, especially in a family business, to outside directors. So they start out on an advisory board, and then they move to fiduciary boards. And
Mhm.
fiduciary boards are ones that actually make the true decisions, the financial decisions for the company.
Yeah. Okay. So that's that difference between the advisory board. And so the advisory board, sometimes that can be less formal, right? Too, the nomination process, committee structure, things like that. Tell us a little bit about the difference in the structure of an advisory board and a fiduciary responsibility.
Well, it depends on the company. With an advisory board, it could look any way, any shape or form. It could
Hmm.
be they are thinking about going into a different product line, so they want to gather some people that have knowledge on that product line. So
Right.
they will bring two or three people together and help advise them on their past experience on moving into that area. As it as the Private Directors Association tries to encourage with fiduciary boards to follow a more formal structure where there is some procedures in place for good governance, and
Right.
that it's more of a formal process. Now, that said, that doesn't mean that you follow all the rules of Robert's Rules of Order and
Right.
everybody asked to speak. It could be quite informal, but there is still a formal process. There's usually
Hmm.
an agenda, there's a vote, and a recording of those votes.
Hmm. Okay. And this is great. I love that you dig into the difference here because we have so many candidates that are thinking about launching their search for a board seat. And really the pathway to an advisory board seat is easier. There's lower barrier to entry and a great starting point then to get that more formal fiduciary responsibility as a board director in another form in a more formal board. And I find that that's usually a better entry point than I see, especially a lot of women try to do a lot of nonprofit board seats, trying to get that board experience, and that not isn't always a great entry into paid board seats. So that advisory seat, for an early stage company, working directly with the founder, things like that can be a lot easier to manage. So now that we have an idea about that, I'd love to talk a little bit about your upcoming conference. I'm so excited. This is a shameless plug, but also because I attended this conference last year. It was absolutely fantastic. Michelle and I both went. The content was amazing. So let's talk a little bit about the conference, who should attend, what they're going to learn.
Well, the conference name is PRISM, and it is a conference that brings together experts and professionals in various fields for networking, of course,
Hmm.
learning, and innovation in the area of private company governance. This year it's held, believe it or not, in Disneyland Resort Hotel and Conference Center in Anaheim. It's Anaheim, not the one in Florida, not Disney World.
Right. We're going to California.
Yes. And it's going to be held on October 7th through 9th.
Hmm.
We have tons of speakers. We have 36 speaker sessions, and we have 3 master classes. And one of the master classes is you, Debra Boggs. You're going to be speaking on the pathway to boardroom.
Yes, we're so incredibly excited about this. Thank you so much for the invitation. So Michelle Merritt and I will be hosting a full day masterclass the day ahead of the official start of the conference. And we're going to be sharing everything you need to. It's going to be a hands-on workshop, day-long process of really everything you need to launch your board search as an aspiring candidate or as a candidate who's really looking to level up in your board career. So we're going to talk everything from your board unique value, building your career assets, your board resume, board bio, also executive visibility on LinkedIn, the board interview process, and everything start to finish in a full day masterclass with Michelle and I. So excited for that. Anyone is welcome to join us, especially our friends and network in Southern California. Michelle and I will be there live, so we'd love to see all of you join us.
We think it's a great opportunity to get, hit the conference running, to get your board material put together, because this conference is about networking and learning.
Yes.
And it is so great to be able to have this pre-conference workshop, because that way you will feel like you've gotten your elevator pitch
Mhm.
ready, your packages are ready, so you can hit the floor running when you're
Yep.
meeting all these people that are in attendance.
Yep. You can really make the most of all those introductions and conversations and networking. And I know last year's conference, so this conference is brand new. Last year was your first year in Chicago. Michelle and I joined just as attendees, and we're absolutely blown away with the level of content and also the quality of the networking in the room. There were over 300 attendees, correct me if I'm wrong, for a first time conference, and it was just a really powerful experience. So we are more than thrilled to participate in such a meaningful way this year. We can't wait.
Well, great. And we built in more networking opportunities this year.
Mm-hmm.
And we have some fun activities. Of course, being at Disneyland, you can't just not do a fun activity. And so for our attendees, they get to attend the World of Color. It's a special program at Disneyland Adventure Park, and it is akin to what Epcot does on their show, but it is with lights, lasers, water features, and we have a private viewing area,
Mm-hmm.
and so we're looking forward to doing that networking and carrying on the conversation. Plus, we have other networking throughout the conference.
Right, right, and I'm so excited about that. And then one more plug for the conference, and then we'll move back on. But I'd love to talk a little bit about, you know, I think last time we talked, hotel rooms were about 60% booked, and that is because it is an incredible discount for the Disneyland hotel on site. So I know that I'm particularly really excited about that. I know Michelle and I were going to attend anyway, but the fact that it was at Disneyland made it really exciting.
Well, we did negotiate hard and got a very good group rate. I believe we're about at 78% now. And so
Wow.
if you want to grab a room, there's no guarantee that, we'll be able to get additional rooms once that's filled up,
Right.
maybe at rack rate, which is close to $900 for that room.
Oh,
So,
wow. Yes,
and we're at
exactly.
298. So I think that's a pretty good.
Yep. It was an absolutely excellent rate. So if you're thinking about it, do it quickly. Um, so I really appreciate this background a little bit. And for those of you just joining us, I'd love for you to pop in the chat where you're joining us from. That way we can see where everyone's at. I know someone else in Philadelphia. We've got a Philadelphia cohort in here. You'll have to meet each other, friends. And Michelle Merritt popped in the chat also the link to the event to learn more about the PRISM conference.
Great.
So potential. Oh yeah.
Debra, I wanna mention though, right now we're in early bird pricing for the conference. The
Oh
conference
yeah.
early bird pricing is through July 31st. So that will help. Also, we try to keep the price of the conference low and reasonable,
Mm-hmm.
but you can even save a little more if you register early.
Absolutely, yes. So definitely look into the PDA conference. Michelle and I will be there. Certainly, Rebecca will certainly be there as chair of the conference, and hundreds of other senior leaders in the board space in private company leadership. And even I know there was several board level recruiters at the event last year. So we
Yes.
stayed in close touch with several people we met at the conference. So for candidates thinking about launching their first board seat or really elevating from advisory roles to private company board seats, for those of you just joining us, we have a download. I'm going to pop here. It's a QR code. 3 questions to ask if to determine whether you're board ready. If you're really ready to launch your search for a specific board seat. So feel free to take advantage of this free download, learn a little bit about what it takes to really stand out in the market as a board leader. And as we do that, I'd love to hear from Rebecca. You've sat on countless boards at this point. I'm not even sure how many. You might be able to tell us, I'm sure, but
Well,
I'd love to know about your top advice for how to land that first board seat. What does that look like? And what would you say to an aspiring board director?
well, I think the number one thing you have to do is network. It's like
Mm-hmm.
network, network, network. You do not know where that opportunity is going to come from. Most directors get their board seat from referrals from other directors. So you have to get out there. It's, those board director seats are not going to come knocking at your door if you're sitting in. You got to get out. You got to tell people what you're about. You all have wonderful things to offer. And we just have to find which company would best fit what you have to offer. So get out, network, network, network.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Get out, network, and then having that clear value of what you bring to the table and knowing how you're different in that board space. Because I think what we have a lot of candidates struggle with. Oh, I could help any board. I could help anybody. I'm a senior leader with 25 years of experience, and we're finding that's just not enough to stand out right now. So for the candidates, your fellow board directors, people you serve with, yourself and included, what do you see as some of those things that are helping people stand out right now?
Well, it depends on industry to industry,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm an attorney, which makes me an expert in some things, but many boards don't like attorneys because they're afraid that we're going to be telling them what not to be, or be the anti-marketing department, whatever you want to say, which is not the case, because most attorneys are great issue spotters and they can spot issues, and that's what a good director will do, is help identify issues and possible resolutions for the company. But as it is, my skills are regulatory. I
Mm-hmm.
have a strong background in dealing with regulated companies. So the cannabis, for example, is highly
Right.
regulated. Financial service companies are highly regulated. And
Yes.
so you must stand the test of being able to be in a highly regulated financial or cannabis company, and stand up to whatever scrutinies the regulators have. For other companies, they may be looking for somebody with HR experience, and
Mm-hmm.
because we're in this like very volatile HR area,
Right.
mergers and acquisitions are always a hot area because companies need help to know how to navigate it.
Yeah.
Um,
Certainly.
and definitely, if you are from a CFO type background, you you are of high value to many boards, because let's face it, the company's main purpose for its shareholders is to make money.
Right.
That's that's why it's a for-profit company.
Right.
It's not
It's
a
not for fun. We're here to make money.
right. So whatever skill set you have on a C level or a vice president level skill, that should be what you use to springboard into
Mhm.
the board, and just figure out what skill level you have,
Right.
because there are companies out there looking for that,
Hmm.
but you have to network to get to the right person.
You absolutely have to network. And I love this point, and I want to dig into this a little further because I love your point earlier about how you have to let people know that you're looking and what you're looking for. And I think that, a lot of people think they're going to get plucked out of obscurity, right? Oh, you've had this great career, you've got this great reputation, but if you don't tell people what you're looking for, it may not happen. And I had this talk with a women's leadership group about landing your first board seat. I think Norma Davila was with us. She's our director of coaching. And we had this conversation, let people know, start with advisory seats, things like that. And I got a message from a woman later that day, like 3 hours after the presentation, and said, it never occurred to me to tell people what I was looking for. And I reached out to a couple of founders I know, and I already have an advisory seat. Right. And I'm not saying it's going to happen in a few hours for everyone, but it takes telling the people that you know what you want. And there's an example here in the chat. I'm going to show up here real quick. Caitlin Angeloff, thanks so much for joining us. She's in Seattle, and she said she recently got certified by the University of Washington for their Women on Boards program, volunteered on the PAC-SCI Associate Board for 5 years, and now she's looking for her first board seat for either a nonprofit or for-profit. She just told the chat what she's looking for. Would love to know a little bit more about the types of organizations that you're uniquely equipped to serve, Caitlin. But thanks so much for showing us an example of raising your hand and telling people what you're looking for.
And I want to also say to Caitlin, don't limit yourself to the not-for-profit. I think
Yeah.
that's a lot of what women do is limit themselves for the not-for-profit. Well, although there is a special need, and we've all probably served on hundreds of not-for-profits,
Right.
you need, if you want a career in a for-profit, you need to make that leap and seek that for-profit board position.
Absolutely. And we're not saying don't serve the organizations you're passionate about, right? I know Rebecca and I both serve organizations we're passionate about. I know Michelle Merritt does too, and our chief strategy officer, for those of you that don't know her. But what we're saying is that we see a lot of women specifically want to spend, kind of pay their dues in a not-for-profit board seat, thinking that it'll be a good entree into paid board seats. And as we said at the top of the program, but I know a lot of you come in and out, you may not have heard, it's not typically a good entree into paid board positions or to launching that board director seat for private companies or even public companies, right? And so we need to think about what's really going to open doors for us, and that's typically the advisory board work and not necessarily nonprofit. Again, serve the organizations that you're passionate about, certainly. But if it's a career builder, it's not typically the best place to start.
That's been my experience. And believe me, I serve a lot of not-for-profits.
Right.
PDA being one of them.
Exactly. And so, yeah, we definitely serve organizations we're passionate about, organizations that we believe in, and it's more of a part of our philanthropic activity and not necessarily that career builder. So I would love, and I'm going to throw a couple of curveballs at you because that we didn't talk about earlier, but you're a master networker. You are so good at this. I think we originally met through PDA, but then you had attended a couple of these, posted in the comments, and that's how we originally got really connected. And so I'd love some of your tips on building and activating that network. What does that look like for you? How do you really expand your network into the circles of influence that can open doors?
Well, you have to be strategic about it. We
Mm-hmm.
all have limited time. Many of us have children and other outside activities. Though, believe it or not, some of the parent groups are great for networking
100%.
with that. But you need to be strategic and remember who who you're trying to get in touch with. Why are you trying to reach out to somebody?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're trying to get connected to CEOs or other directors, you need to go to the meetings or the organizations that they're attending.
Right. Yes. Where
So,
are they at? Where are they attending?
so that's number one. Think about where they're attending. That's why PRISM is so important, because there are so many directors attending PRISM. So that's a way to get to network with other board directors.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to, it's like anything, you have to work on that relationship. You have
Right.
to, not stalk the person.
Right.
You don't want to stalk the person, but
Right.
you do want to reach out periodically saying, hi, how's things going? I'm going to be at this conference. Are you going to be? Let's grab coffee or let's catch up. So it's
Yeah.
good to keep that relationship building. And it may take years to build that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And then it'll pay off one day.
Yeah, these relationships take time. I mean, especially to build the trust where one board director will open a door for you and vouch for you and say, hey, Rebecca's amazing at XYZ. You should meet her. Those are things that aren't transactional typically, right? It's their reputation is on the line too. And so this is a relationship, and it's not necessarily a quick ask. And so and I love your point about keeping your relationships warm, checking in with people in a way that's meaningful, but not bothering people, things like that. So I think that's so important. And so what other types of organizations or events or things like that do you involve yourself in to keep your network activated?
Well, I am an attorney, so I do things with the Association of Corporate Counsel,
Yeah.
but that probably is not going to help me meet directors.
Right.
I am a direct woman, which was an initiative of the American Bar Association to recognize women attorneys who are qualified to sit on public company boards, and I was one of 21 chosen for that honor in the year I was
Oh, amazing.
in that. So that I stay involved in those organizations. Um, I any since we're now in the area of webinars and other virtual meetings, I do partake in those, and
Yeah.
especially if you can chat and recognize with some people and use that as a networking. There are many other conferences out there, but of course, I go to the PDA events. Number one,
Yeah.
they are the ones, and we have 3,500 members across the country. So there's you can go to any city and attend one of their events. So I think that is important because there's networking events, there's educational events.
Right.
So I do a mixture of both the networking and educational events because I think it's important to stay current with the education.
Yeah.
But I also think there's time and place only to do the networking.
Yeah, I think you're right too. And I love your point about doing the virtual events. You know, one of the things I tell people that out of the box networking idea that was really helpful for me, and I know for a lot of my clients who are going through their job search or their board search, is to attend the virtual events that your ideal audience is at. And then you have a natural reason to reach out to them, connect with them, send a connection request on LinkedIn or an email. You know, usually you've got LinkedIn, and say, you know, I saw we were both at the XYZ event online. I'd love to connect and follow your work. And if they connect, then having a link to a virtual calendar and saying, thanks so much for connecting. I'd love to, you know, chat over a virtual coffee, get to know you better. Because you have a warm connection, you'll be shocked at how many people will take you up on that virtual coffee and will take you up on building that relationship. And it's a lot lower ask now, especially if it's a 15-minute link or a 20-minute link, than asking someone to meet you for live coffee. I met someone locally here for live coffee the other day, and we had a really great time, and it was lovely. But it was funny. We met virtually first to see, do we want to spend the time? Because it's a big ask now.
Well, and for me, most of the time it would be, I live in the suburbs of Chicago. I would have to drive an hour into Chicago, have
Right.
have the meeting and drive an hour back. It is half the day for coffee.
It is. That's a big ask. Oh, and John here in the chat says, and ask how can I help? John gets called out all the time in these LinkedIn lives because he is an absolute master networker. So if any of you have seen these before, you've seen him pop up in our chats. He's absolutely, he could teach a master class in networking.
Great.
So as we wrap up here, I would love for everyone to pop in the chat what tip was meant for you today. What do you feel like you can take away from this conversation? And as we wrap up, I'm also going to pop up the download 3 questions to ask to launch your board career one more time. And I also want to mention that next week's session will be with Suzanne Brown, who leads the New York Stock Exchange board program. So next week's session is going to be all about public board leadership and how to launch your public board career, what public boards are looking for right now, what considerations are happening. And so her, along with this really great conversation with Rebecca Wing about private board leadership, I think will really complement each other as you all think about your board journey, wherever it is. So yes, please pop in the chat what you learned from Rebecca today, what really resonated with you. And Rebecca, how can we reach out to you? How can we follow you?
Well, of course, I'm on LinkedIn on Rebecca J. Wing. So reach out. I'm be happy to connect with you.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, Rebecca is such a great connection to have, and pop in the chat for anyone who wants an invitation to the LinkedIn Live next week with Suzanne Brown. It's not up yet, so as soon as it's up, we'll send you a link to schedule. And if you want any more information on the PRISM conference or the full day masterclass on launching your board career, pathways to the boardroom, message us as well. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Debra, for inviting me. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for coming.